Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Monday, April 20th, 2020, 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Today we're going to have a little discussion about campaign and world building, and probably talk a bit about my own Grimwald setting, but in particular an area known as the Dragon's Teeth. I see Todd's in the chat this morning. How you doing, Todd? I've got you in on the weekly drawing for week 4. So you're all set there. Just a heads up to anybody out there that if you're interested in being a part of the weekly drawing, you just need to follow the Twitch channel and then show up at some point when we're streaming in the chat area for Twitch and say hello, make yourself known, and you'll be automatically added in for the random drawing on Sunday for the previous week. So let me see. Todd. Todd, are you also over on the Discord channel this morning? I don't see you over there. I did open that up just to see if anybody'd wander in over there. If you want to be, want to make it a two-way discussion, jump in and add in your 2 cents. Do some talking of various things. What is... I thought I had you set up as a friend on here. Yep. Invite the server. You're already here. Create an invite. You are already here, so I guess I can't invite you. Is that right? How do I get it so that you can join? Maybe I just add this link down into the... Does that do it so you can join in the voice chat part, or do you have to click on that on the left? There we go. We'll open that up on that end too. And we are rolling. I wonder if there's something worth opening up to show everybody. Okay. I think we gotta open up the old folder. Hey, Todd, how are you? Good. Welcome. Is it pronounced Nilsson? Nielsen?
Nilsson. Yeah.
It is Nilsson. Okay. Why don't you introduce yourself to the channel so people know you're...
I'm getting an echo because I think I'm on the channel.
Yeah, that can be problematic. If you just turn off the sound on Twitch, you should be fine then.
Hey, there we go. I think
Sound good now?
I believe so.
Cool.
Hey, Mark, nice to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on. I'm always happy to have other people jump into the conversation. Let me ask you, how long have you been an RPGer, a role-playing gamer?
You know, I think I got my first D&D set back around 79 or 80.
Yeah.
My mother had bought the Holmes edition of D&D and didn't know what she got me, which I've teased her about incessantly over the years. But yeah, I've been a pretty constant gamer ever since.
Nice.
Yeah.
And do you recall some early memories? What games you might have adventures you might have played? Did you do a lot of home brewing back then? Were you a DM right away, or were you a player mostly? Or
I was a little bit of both, but I think primarily a DM. Uh, like I said, I started out with Holmes, but I think like many of us, I quickly graduated or upgraded to advanced.
mm-hmm.
My first books were the first edition Monster Manual, and I had the whole first edition set.
Right.
Ran a lot of games with my dad, and also ran for a lot of my friends in the neighborhood. I did homebrew in kind of a version um, of Greyhawk that I had extended in various ways, uh, and definitely enjoyed running a lot of Call of Cthulhu early on too. I had one of the old box sets of that. Those were my two mainstay games for many years,
Right.
pretty much.
So, how young were you when you started messing around with some Call of Cthulhu stuff?
That was it was a couple of years. It was maybe 82, 83. So I mean, I was still in my early teens
Hmm.
around then. I had never really read any Lovecraft actually, so my introduction to Lovecraft was the game, and my one of my close buddies who I'm still friends with, he and I were just blown away by how different the game was from D&D, and sort of the whole idea of sanity and the setting and just the really strange monsters and everything. That it really kind of captured our imaginations at the time.
You mean there's more to losing than just bleeding? Yes,
Dying well spectacularly, right?
right. You mean I could live but be completely mad?
Yes, exactly.
And that means I won't be able to play anymore?
Right, right.
Well, not that character. That's okay. We all lose characters along the way, right? Do you re-
Exactly.
do you remember any of your early? And you know, I'm gonna open right up with open up a can of worms with the old question. Tell me about your character. Do you remember one of your earliest characters? One of your favorites? One that lasted beyond the first couple of swings?
Oh yeah, I think my longest standing character that I played was an elven fighter magic user by the name of Travius, uh, who he ended up getting pretty darn tough. I think I mean I played him across campaigns because I think that was a little bit less of an issue in those days. When I went into junior high and high school, my regular gaming group, I would play him, but I'd also play him in games that my dad DM with me. So he got to be pretty high level. I think at the high point he was something like a ninth level fighter, 11th or 12th level magic user. Might have gotten a little higher than that, but and you know how it went in those days.
Hmm.
You could end up being kind of decked out like a Christmas tree with magic items of various sorts. But I do remember he had one really cool weapon that was almost kind of an artifact level thing. It was called the gray flame. That's right. It was a long sword. I think it was like +3, and it had an extra plus against giants or something like that, and it had some vorpal capabilities. Um, yeah, lot of fond memories from playing back in those days. We would particularly I'd sit out under the maple tree in the backyard with my dad, and we'd be sipping some Cherokee Red soda, and he'd be into the evening over the summers playing long games, and a lot of good memories there.
Wow, that's great. That's really cool. I was just thinking as soon as you brought it up. an elf fighter magic user. I remember an early one of mine that got into the high single digits, shall we say, fifth, sixth, seventh, and like you say, lots of magic items in those days, and yeah, and his name, and this will betray how young I was at the time, was Jonathan Spellflinger. So,
Nice.
right, so the classic take two words to create your name, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
I love it.
and then and then throw a first name in front to kind of legitimize the rest of it. But
So cool.
oh yeah, yeah. I remember Jerry had a one of the things we got hold of in a tower that we had cleared out was a uh, a magic item that I think he had created because I don't recall ever seeing it anywhere else. Um, you know those lanterns that you shove into the ground out, you know,
Oh,
in your backyard or whatever to
like a tiki torch or something, or
similar to that, but low to the ground. Usually, you put them along a path between, a
oh, sure,
house and a
sure.
patio or whatever around the outside of the patio, just low to the ground. So this was something like that, and you would take it and you would put it in the middle of your camp, and it basically functioned as an alarm. If any evil came within, I think it was 50 feet indoors, 50 yards outdoors, as we used to do, right? Um, Anything that came within that perimeter would set it off as an alarm. And, so it was essentially an alarm spell grafted onto a magic item, right?
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah,
Yeah, it was just a neat
I
little
wish I
thing.
had thought of that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you will. So that's how that works, right? We all
Exactly.
snag what we can every time we hear a cool idea, and that change a little and becomes our own as we continue to evolve the game.
Yeah, I still think back. There were some. I can't remember if it was like Jim Ward or Len Lakofka. I'm probably saying his name wrong.
Mm,
One of the early articles, I think it showed up in Best of Dragon back in the day, where they were talking about some early lessons learned in dungeoneering,
yeah.
like get your potions out of glass vials and put them into metal canisters, and
Mm-hmm.
if you come across some green slime in the dungeon, put it in a clay pot so you can throw it as a bomb at things. I love
Right.
tips like that stuff.
All of those nasty little extras that you pick up. A lot of times we used to pick up things like that when we'd go and play at a convention because often we'd wind up playing with people that we hadn't played with before. So the usual ideas weren't all thought of. They were fresh, always fresh ideas from other groups that had figured things out. Um, Either, things they read in articles that we hadn't read or things that they thought of themselves that probably should have become an article.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Subscribe. Oh, check that out. Thanks so much.
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
That's that's Twitch Prime. So do you use that a lot? With are you also a console gamer? Or
I am not. Yeah, I just happen to use Amazon Prime, and
oh
so
yeah.
I get a free sub every month, and so I had been spending it on. I don't know if you ever check out any. I can't remember his last name at the moment. Matt from MCDM Productions. He's done. I like his YouTube channel quite a bit. But hey, you're local and I know you, so I got to
Nice.
throw it your way.
Well, thanks so much, Matt. What is the name of his channel? Let's give him a plug.
it's uh, it's MCDM Productions, and he's got a Kickstarter, Kingdoms and Warfare. Um, I'm
Oh,
blanking
Matt
on his last
Colville.
name at the moment. Oh yeah, Matt Colville. Yes,
Sure.
thank you.
You know, he's
Yeah.
got some really fantastic tips and stuff. And you know what else he does really well? He
Mm.
speaks fast on all of his uh,
He does.
streams and YouTube
Yeah.
and whatever, but he's very good at still being understandable. You don't
Yeah.
really lose
I think
anything.
he's had some acting or voice training or something. Just a very articulate guy. I like his insights about running games. Clearly been at it, you know, I don't know about quite as long as you or I, but he's definitely the guy who's thought quite a lot about running games and building campaigns, and I really appreciate his stuff quite a bit. Yeah, it
He's
really is.
yeah. Well, that's old, December 18th or December 13th, 2018. But he's probably just focused mainly on the YouTube channel at this point, right?
I am
I think he's
pleased.
got Twitch. I think he's got a second Kickstarter going right now.
Okay.
That he comes up on the channel a lot. He's he's an interesting cat too because he does a lot of stuff with like synthesizers and he's into music and he'll pop on and he'll do like he's done some board games and some NetHack and Minecraft, with some folks on the channel. So there's a lot of variety on his channel. If you're just sort of a D&D purist, you, you know, you're going to pick and choose sort of what you want to listen to with him.
Right.
And,
Dune Part 1. Oh, he's getting excited about Dune. That's cool.
yeah, he's a huge Dune nerd. He goes on at great length about what a neat book that was.
Mm-hmm.
Series really.
Sure. Sure. Nice. Well, yeah, he does some great stuff, and he's his all of the stuff he puts out is really slick and edited, and I mean that in the best possible way, not in a derogatory way like some might say slick. He just does a really good job. Everything he does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I definitely like his stuff. And then I don't know if you've run across the guy that he gamed with. He's definitely an old schooler like us. Um, yeah, his name down. I'll pull it up.
Somebody he plays with on streamed games
I think
that
somebody
he does.
he used to do a lot more live gaming with. I think before he kind of hit it big,
Mm-hmm.
he hung with this guy a lot. Um, he calls himself a game Methuselah.
Oh, I think I've seen his name around on different things.
Yeah, Jim Murphy. That's the name.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim Murphy Game Methuselah. He does some really neat stuff. He's got a segment called Monster Mamba,
Uh-huh.
and he basically sets up these encounter situations that are just really fun. And
I like it already just for the
yeah,
name.
he'll figure out like he loves using Sturges, and so
Uh-huh.
he'll have them kind of like you know come in waves to the player characters,
Right.
and like just he keeps upping the ante about like these encounters. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a lot of TPKs with his players, but
Sure.
I appreciate him.
Right on. So you've got a few of those collective nouns in the thread we started on the OK Grognard Show Facebook group. Um, you added in.
Oh, yes, that's right. I love that whole conversation that you guys started.
Here's some of your
I,
classics. A confusion of displacer beasts. That was a great one. Clutch of
oh yeah,
kobolds, gathering of goblins, uh, jello bowl of gelatinous cubes. That one was cracking me up. Who was it that did? Oh, you did Carnival of Flumps too. That's good.
That's the only thing I can think of for flumps. They're just so ridiculous, anyways.
You know, sometimes when you hear one, a different one pops into your mind, uh, and sometimes it's worse, or sometimes it's better, or it's just different. But when you did Carnival of Flumps, I couldn't think of nothing else after that. That kind of that was just the way it was going to be. So I'm afraid that from now on I will always refer to them as a Carnival of Flumps. I, you know, I've never been one because I tend to do a more it's never the right word, but I'll use it anyway, realistic kind of setting, and always tend to do a humanocentric. So if you're playing a non-human, you're always kind of on the fringe of whatever's happening in the game world. Um, because of that, I also tend to shy away from the more bizarre creatures. So Flumps never really worked, although I did use owlbears, and that's kind of weird.
I love owlbears.
And
They're just totally great as a wizard's experiment. I mean, I think flumps are. I don't think I ever used them.
a slobber. Rob Wheeler, great painter, says a slobber of trolls. I thought that was really good.
That was good. That was good.
But I was looking specifically for who added in. Oh, Steve Frisma. He's got a ton of them. The duplicitousness of doppelgangers was really good.
Oh, that is good. Yeah.
Oh, here's a question. Catoblepus? Is that how you pronounce that?
Oh, sorry, you broke a little bit. Can you say that again?
Catoblepus?
Oh,
Catabolus?
I
Is
always called them a catoblepus, but
okay.
that was just my first impression. I was racking my brain about what you because I would just sort of call them a herd because they look like
Right.
a herd animal of some sort. But
They do. Yeah, they look like ancient megafauna gone wrong, I suppose. Right.
yeah, yeah, and I can't really imagine more than one of them congregating in a place. I don't remember from the old 1E monster manual if they had a number appearing there beyond one.
And that's a good question. I have one to hand. I'll have to do a quick look. Oh, here's what I was looking for. I wanted to give credit where it's due. Steve Frisma's also the one who came up with a skewer of sturges.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of my favorites from the whole thread. Number appearing 1 to 3.
Oh, so you could
Yeah.
have a little clutch of catapultus or whatever.
Right. A clutch, sure. I think the
They
sometime
have like a death gaze, don't they?
they do. They do. It's
Yeah.
the nastiest thing. Often when they had low numbers like this, they would suggest that if there were two, it would be a mated pair, and if there were three, it would either be a female with a couple of young, or a male and a female with one young. But it doesn't. I'm looking in the monster manual right now. I don't see anything like that. That may have been something added into later ecology books. I think they did a lot more of that in second edition, and
Sure, sure.
of course every other edition since, and a lot of Dragon magazine articles included stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the old ecology of articles. I love those things.
Mm-hmm. Which they, of course, would always fold in later to official books. Yeah, I'm sure in part to bring up the page count and give you your money's worth, but also to share good material that they've come up with that don't make everybody go back and search out the articles when you can add it into the next full book, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they added a lot. That always comes to mind for me was the ecology of the periton. Uh,
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Periton. Um,
sure.
but that was particularly good because I think they kind of wrote it as a like a hunting uh, account. There was an expedition kind of searching for them, and yeah, it was yeah, quite good.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Now, I didn't get to read a lot of those back in the day because my first DM, and yeah, we shared duties back then, but the guy who was our main DM for our small group of 4 or 5 mostly regular players, 3 of them were brothers, and then myself and usually 1 or 2 other people would all play together. We also all played hockey together, and so this was our, I guess,
Sure.
intellectual side. And
Right.
right, it's how we exercised our minds when we weren't exercising our bodies. And he had dibs on stuff that was put out by TSR and stuff that was put out by Judges Guild. Those were like his 2 domains. Um, and then which forced me inevitably to do a lot more home brewing.
Oh, sure, sure. Judges Guild was always sort of a strange treasure for me to come across. I think I only have maybe 3 or 4 old Judges Guild supplements,
Mm-hmm.
but one of which I absolutely loved, which was it was kind of like a book of mini dungeons. I think it was the Book of Ruins. It was called.
Oh yeah.
Man, that was first rate. I reused those things continuously. I still go back and play with them just to kind of update them a little bit and run them for modern campaigns because they're just great for an evening's entertainment. They're just all just kind of the perfect length.
I remember as soon as it came out that Jerry, who was the oldest of the 3 boys in our main DM, was picked up City State, and that same character I was talking about before eventually went through with the group through Tagle Manor and all sorts of
Sure.
other adventures like that.
Yeah, never played it, but yeah, very cool. Oh, hey, how about a funeral of Catoblepas?
Ooh, yeah, I like that one. Make sure you post that in that thread. Definitely, that's a good one. Or wait a minute now. So it's a death gaze, huh?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about is the funeral? What if that's implied? What if it's something? Well, no, there's not enough of them. I was going to say something like a procession of cataplepas, but
Oh, yeah, yeah. I get where you're going.
if
Yeah,
that it would need to be a lot more of them for that
right.
to be a good thing. But yeah, funeral of cataplepas, I think. Oh, you know what? Here you go.
Hmm.
A viewing of cataplepas.
Oh, yeah,
It's a gaze, their weapon, right? And it's also implies a
yeah.
dead body is being observed.
That that makes me uncomfortable. Yes, already. So therefore, it's awesome.
Right? You know it's good when it gives you a chill.
Right, right. Well done, well done. Um, cool. So, so Mark, were you originally were you playing sort of 0e, pre first edition kind of stuff? Were you playing sort of the Meta Magic books and all that?
Yeah, actually, my I tell the tale so often I forget who's heard it and who hasn't. But I really started off in the early '70s as a war gamer. Our In our neighborhood in northern Illinois in Waukegan, um, when we were junior high and moving up, we played a little bit just with our buddies, and there were ROTC kids in the neighborhood that were always looking for young cannon fodder to play their war games against. So anybody that was a chess player or any other game player of any kind would get recruited to start playing war games with them. And there were some local game clubs in Waukegan that were mainly filled with guys from Great Lakes Naval Training Base and Fort Sheridan, which was a little further south in near Lake Forest. But is closed now. That was an Army base. Great Lakes Naval Training Center is still there. So there were a lot of military guys that these ROTC guys would also play against, and they would drag us to these clubs, and they'd give you a little detachment of. There's a lot of miniatures wargaming going on. There were certainly some hex and chit board games. Tactics 2 was one of the first. Of course, that was squares rather than hexes. Neat games like that we used to Blitzkrieg and other board war games. But then Chainmail, when it first came out in the early 70s, I guess by 72, 73, I'd been playing it for a little while before D&D first came out. And also, a lot of those guys that were military, back when there was a train that went from Waukegan or went from the northern Illinois suburbs up to Lake Geneva, would come up to Lake Geneva and play against the wargamers up in Lake Geneva. So they went to those early Gen Cons, and when D&D first got published in 74, they brought it right back down with them. So at the game clubs, we could get introduced to it. We'd pick up a strategic review or whatever other zine was around, in the mid 70s, and you'd dig around and find the P.O. box and send your $10 up, and plus shipping and handling, and get that stuff sent back down to you. Although my first Gen Con was actually in 75. It was one of the last ones at the Horticultural Hall.
I'm so jealous, dude. You were right there at ground zero of history, and I was off in western Pennsylvania, as a little kid, just sort of dreaming of maybe one day I could go to a Gen Con and see what that was all about. It all just seems so unreal and far away,
Well,
I think for those of us that grew up outside of the area.
I have to credit Abbott Laboratories with that. My father was an Abbott Labs man. I was born in Philadelphia and lived in eastern Pennsylvania up until the late 60s, and when Abbott Park was being built.
Not against you, Mark. That's okay.
Yeah, right. He got transferred out to the Midwest to work first in North Chicago and then at Abbott Park as it finished up getting built. So that's what brought us out to Waukegan back in those days. So if it wasn't for his being transferred as a career man with Abbott Labs, I would never have known the Midwest, never would have known all of that stuff until much later, if ever. So just.
I think that's amazing that you had that experience, and to be there to see a lot of those early, gaming history events. My earliest Gen Con was back around maybe around 2000 when I moved to Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the last cons at the Mecca.
Sure.
They're in downtown Milwaukee.
Yeah, those were a real treat. I remember, we did that Horticultural Hall. There was the one year it was at the Playboy Club. I was there. We did a handful of years at University of Wisconsin at Parkside. Now, I didn't go every year, but I probably went between 75 and 2000. I was probably at Gen Con 2 out of every 3 years.
Okay.
Sometimes there'd be a couple of years in a row where I didn't go, but for the most part, about 2/3 of the Gen Cons I had attended up through the time it moved down to Indianapolis. And then I went for quite a few years in a row, and then eventually, I don't know, just too big, too crowded, something about traveling, walking 2 or 3 miles from one end of a convention to another to rush to get from one game to another, and Yeah, it's just too much, and there's so much gaming in northern Illinois and in Wisconsin that you can go to that's a little more manageable.
Oh, totally. That's
So,
just it. Yeah, I try not to be resentful of Wizards of the Coast kind of pulling Gen Con out of Wisconsin and down to Indiana.
right.
Um, I get why they did it, numbers and all that, but hey man, that was our con, and I think I was maybe a little extra peeved about it because I had just moved to Wisconsin. I was like, hey man, I just got here. Why are you yanking it out of here already for?
Right. I absolutely love the fact that it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and more
I do
people are
too.
playing and stuff. But you're right. There's something lost there that. But I think we find it again when we go to a Gary Con or a Gamehole
Oh yeah.
Con, or I go to Nexus every year in Milwaukee in June. The
Oh
game
totally.
the board gaming
Oh sorry.
conventions, the gaming hoopla. I don't know if you've heard of that. That just got canceled, of course. Um,
No, I hadn't heard of that one. So I've hit a number. So I'm up in northeast Wisconsin here in Two Rivers,
mm-hmm.
and I every year I try to hit the Fire and Ice game convention, which is a little con
Mm-hmm.
here in Manitowoc,
Yeah.
and then um, and then there's
New
game
Gameapalooza.
Palooza over in Oshkosh.
I I went up to I don't know if it was their first one, maybe second one. It hasn't been around that long.
Yeah.
I went up there and they did they did it at the college there, and one of the nice
Yeah.
things was the inexpensive um, dorm room digs you could pick up for like $25 a
Oh
night or something.
yeah.
What a
Yeah.
great deal! Just
I, I love those little little cons that just kind of maintain what they are and that
mm-hmm.
identity that maybe they've had for years.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's something like a homecoming too, because you tend to see a lot of the same folks at those small game con experiences.
right.
I really appreciate them.
Yeah, those are a lot of fun. I'm trying to find, I was tooling around maybe it's not here. I was tooling around in Drive Through RPG trying to find that Book of Ruins. I wonder if it has Judges. Maybe that stuff isn't under Judges Guild anymore. Maybe it's under a different, or I hope because it gets reprinted. Hmm.
Oh, that could be.
Yeah. Well, let me see. Try this again. Do this way. Because I know they have the Wilderland setting up there still, and all the maps from the city state. Maybe they just don't have some of the offbeat stuff. No, yep, I'm not seeing it. Bummer. Okay. Well, you could probably go to the Judges Guild website and get some of the, or just go to eBay, right? Pick up that stuff in its
Yeah.
original form if it's available somewhere.
I enjoy the challenge of just looking for local flea markets and stuff like that. You never or house sales. You never know when you come across something like that.
Yeah, what a treat it used to be to go to a half price books before they got wise to
Yeah,
to,
right.
to skyrocketing values. I used to take when I'd have a day off. I'd used to take 3, 4, 5 hours, and I'd plan a little route so I could drive around the suburbs to five, six, seven of them.
Oh,
Different
sure.
half price around Chicago. There were I don't know if there were 12 or 14. So you could do one day you could do a trip around half of them, and another day you could do a trip around the other half. Hit all of the game sections, hit the board gaming section, hit the what are they, the clearance section in the back for $1 Forgotten Realms novels and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And that was always because they printed enough of those things that they wound up with 3 or 4 of them, so they'd keep one on their main shelf and then shovel the rest into the clearance area.
Sure, sure. I still like, I'll hit the thrift stores or stuff every so often, and you come across stuff, um, some of the old game books and fiction and sometimes minifigs and stuff like that. Have you ever seen? We put them up in the chat channel. Have you ever seen this guy, Blanco?
Glencoe. Wait a minute now. I'm getting a quick look. Oh, you don't mean in the chat.
Oh, up in the stream rather. Yeah.
Let me see.
Chat.
I'm just seeing three asterisks. Pop it up on the Discord. Maybe there it'll allow for pictures.
Oh yeah.
There we go. Blanco.
I love this. This guy's really neat. He'll go out to bags of toys or things, and he'll either mod old toys, or he'll find like old D&D miniatures or game pieces and stuff, and turn them into props.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
I know just who this guy is. I remember seeing him when he was doing this originally as a blog, I believe.
Oh, okay.
He had a really neat wow, look at this. He's been at it quite a while now, and he does it super regular. He definitely 2 years. I'm scrolling down. I'm seeing here. I should just put this up over here. You know what? I'm gonna pop up onto the top so that everybody can see his logo, his banner, so that they'll recognize it when they go look for him. But then I'm going to keep scrolling down. I got 4 years ago. I got 13 years ago. Some of his... Now, this early YouTube stuff looks like stuff he did as a youngster, pre-YouTube D&D stuff. Chicken Wings, right. Skull and Shackles Pathfinder miniatures 6 years ago. That looks like his earliest gaming video is from about 6 years ago. That has gaming miniatures in it. Well, there's Trolls. Here we go. Okay, yep. And then after that, there's a lot of Dreamcast stuff. And then it looks like he gets into regular gaming videos. Somewhere around 4 years ago, he really starts hitting it hard. And then after that, he doesn't turn back.
I really appreciate that, like his whole orientation. The early history of the hobby. It's a hobby, and there's a lot of do-it-yourself around. Around playing the game and running the game. Sort of, it doesn't always need to be sort of the latest and greatest thing that comes out of Wizards of the Coast. That uses a prop on your table. It could be something found. It just works really well. So I appreciate that philosophy of what he does.
He likes to crow when he has a big score like this best Goodwill find ever. Just a quick 2-minute and 50-cent video without copyright. I don't want to click on it or anything. It's one thing to look at his channel. It's another thing to pull up his material, right? So I don't want to do that, but I will save that for later, and I'm sure other people can look it up themselves. But now I'm curious, what did he find, right? So,
Well, I think he's a little challenged right now with the whole coronavirus thing. None of the are fine.
That's true. He's probably scooting around on eBay quite a bit, looking for things like that. Now, something I recently picked up because I've been working on putting together an adventure, which I actually planned on doing for Gary Con. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my camera here and bigify my big skull over here so I could show something off. All the way from Russia came this box that I picked up. So over the years, there's been a lot of versions of the Giant series, right?
Sure.
You get the originals, and I played in those when they were part of the D&D tournaments back in the day. And then there was the 3rd edition versions or 5th edition versions now. Mike Schley did maps, which he is then allowed to sell on his own website in high-res versions that you can then purchase and manipulate to use at your own table or use them on Roll20 or whatever. So I was playing around with those. I'd actually taken Steading of the Hill Giant Chief and took his high-res map and cleared out the numbers and hid the secret doors and did some other things. And then on my own map, I moved some stuff around so it wouldn't be just a carbon copy of that. And I was setting up an adventure that I was ostensibly going to call Insteading with the Hill Giant Chief, because it was a bit of a mashup of all the different versions and what I could get a hold of. Of course, I was looking at some of these pre-painted plastic, the various pre-painted plastic giants to use for in the game. But then I had to figure out, well, given the different sizes that things have changed over between 3rd and 5th edition, because that's really where the pre-painted plastic started, I still needed something to use for ogres and other big size. So, of course, 54 millimeter Vikings from Russia were what I could find on eBay that I could get in large quantities, and there were some other Saxons and other and then there were a bunch of these Conan miniatures that I was unaware of.
Those are cool.
Yeah, and these actually would make fantastic. Of course, you saw those two, and then you've got a couple of these guys, and
those guys look like plastics. Right?
they are. Oh yeah, they're absolutely the cheapest of all plastics.
Nice.
There's another. But when you can get when you can spend $5 or $6 and spend about $1 a miniature and fill out the ranks of your ogres, then you buy some of these and you buy some of these. Hard to see with the reflection, right? And buy some of the Vikings, get a bag of each, and then cuts down on the overall cost, right? Kind of prorate your cost. And that works out perfect. So I've got, 30 or 40 of these Vikings, which may be way more than I would need for that particular scenario. But because I have some of several kinds, I can also use them for, if I base them up right, I can use them for miniature wargaming as well.
Right.
At that size.
Now we just gotta get out of the days of social distancing so we can table again.
Right. Yeah. It's true enough that board gaming I can jump into from time to time rather quickly with the people that board game around here, and there's always the chance to run my own D&D game on a weekly basis and gather up enough players, especially in southern Wisconsin, to play some first edition, and I can do that online. But what I often wind up doing at GaryCon is sign up for a lot of wargaming, because throughout the year I don't get to do a whole lot of that.
Oh yeah, great.
If I played more, and I have played some, but it's not my rule set of choice. But if I played more GW, if I played more Games Workshop stuff, whether it be 40K or Age of Sigmar or whatever, and I do like those games. I have nothing against them. But if I played more of those, I could find those games 2-3 times a week of hardly any difficulty. But I picked up a set of the Frostgrave rules more recently, but I used to play a lot of Hordes of the Things, which was a fantasy pared down version of DBA, DBM.
I never heard of that.
There's a group out of England that has been writing wargame rules. Barker is the name of the main guy of the group. Since the 70s themselves, since the 80s, and a lot of those rules don't get used as much anymore. They've been supplanted by Field of Glory and other games like that, because these are wargaming rules that tend to use stands of miniatures, where you'll base 2 or 3 or 4 miniatures all on a single base to represent a unit, rather than have individually based miniatures, which I often preferred, because then of course those miniatures can be used in my RPGing as well, right?
Right.
Once they're on a stand, you're kind of stuck using them that way.
Sure. Yeah, I never got to play many of the. I played a fair amount of Warhammer 90s. I think I had and still have my dwarf army from that, but haven't had the chance to do a lot of war. A little bit of some Star Trek, Starship Simulation.
Mm-hmm. Starfleet battles, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I enjoyed that, but never a lot of other work in my area for me to do anything like that regularly.
Did you have you played any chainmail at all?
Never played it. I've always been a little curious to see what that was like.
Oh, that's definitely something you're going to have to do, and probably do get the best experience of it at a convention like a GaryCon, where guys like Kevin Gabai and Paul Stormberg and Kevin Maurice and all of those guys run so many chainmail games. John Bobek.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah,
of course,
I'd love to try that out this time. I was gonna try to make it to GaryCon this year, but obviously that wasn't gonna happen for any of us. So
yeah,
maybe next year. See what happens.
yeah, definitely. Oh, and Keith Sloan and his brother Brian play a lot, and Keith's been hard at work the last couple of years putting together a sizable cache of miniatures, and really well painted, and painted up to specifically represent the various areas in Greyhawk. So, Knights of Ferundian, the various factions from the various different regions of Greyhawk, so that he could run chainmail games based off of battles that get mentioned in the various fictions and in canon that is the world of Greyhawk, right?
Right, right. Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, he was all set to go with some great games lined up for this year. If you get into the GaryCon events calendar, you look up Keith Sloan, and if his stuff is still in there, hopefully it's still in there. Right on tabletop events. Are you planning on doing some of the gaming for Con of Champions? Which is
No, I was actually eyeing up Cobalt Con, which looks like it's coming up here first week of May.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I hadn't really looked into Con of Champions. I'd heard of it. I know I had seen streams on Facebook about it, but
Well, of course, you know you're going to have a good time doing Cobalt Con. I mean, those guys, they just do it up right. But I would highly recommend everybody look up Con of Champions. It's, tabletop events, kind of fundraising virtual convention. So part of,
sure. Oh, that's right.
right, because they're getting hit pretty hard with the fact that so many conventions get canceled because, well, they're the backbone of a lot of conventions like GaryCon. If the convention doesn't run, they don't take in any money. So, it's kind of like being a scarf in someone's wardrobe when they move to Florida.
Exactly. Right.
if you never get trotted out and worn, yeah, you kind of, you're now the appendix of the gaming convention world.
Exactly. Right.
They did manage to do some cool stuff with the virtual GaryCon. Did I put an article on the front of that accidentally? Did I say the virtual GaryCon? I
The one and only.
here comes
Very kind.
here comes my age, right? It's true enough that I guess so far it has been the only virtual GaryCon. In a sense, I know they've done some things alongside regular GaryCons in a few years past as they sort of ramped up toward the idea that if you couldn't make it to GaryCon, well, here's a virtual alternative, so go do that. But this is the first one that was, full out balls to the walls, ready to go as an actual virtual convention. But as I say, Con of Champions, definitely sign up for that. Pick up a $2 ticket, pick up a $5 ticket, uh, to be part of it, and then join in a game or two, or go check out some seminars. It'll probably be in the long run the best $2 or $5 you've spent on a convention because it'll make getting to the other side of this worth it because we won't have lost something.
Here. That's my yeah. It sounds like a great worthy cause. I'm really glad you're plugged, and I will definitely check it out.
Cool. I'm going to do a quick tease here before you go. We're coming up on the hour, and I just want to do a little, because I said I was going to do this. You know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say thanks for joining us. I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to mention the schedule here and then do a little sign off and hit it at an hour. Thank you very much.
Oh, Mark, you were super gracious to him.
It's a pleasure, and anytime you're around in the stream and you get Discord up and running, definitely join in. It's always fun to have more people bantering back and forth and just listen to one old Grognard drone on, right?
Well, amen to that, except that we had two old grog on instead. So.
There you go. I make you look young, though, so that's good, right? Todd, thanks again, and I'll be catching up with you real soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good, Mark. Take care.
Bye. Okay, bye-bye. All right, so, okay, Grognard, 7 days a week, 10:30 a.m. Central Time, all week long, Tuesday and Friday, little board gaming. Wednesday campaign discussion post Tuesday game, if we're lucky to keep getting a Tuesday game going. We'd review a cartoon on Saturday morning. We're up to episode 4 of the D&D animated series. Sunday, the weekly prize winner. And of course today is cartography and world building. We talked a bit about that with our guest, Todd Nelson. Look on Anchor this week. We should get the first part of Hour of the Dragon up. That's a 22-part, probably 20 parts. I think there's a few short chapters that we can squeeze in together. I want to thank everybody who's listening in on YouTube and who gets around to the Twitch channel. Don't forget to follow and, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and we will catch you again soon.